I'm going to go through the different shape tools in here. So it's quick key U, and inside there you have various tools. So on the options bar, I'm just going to work with a rectangle. We have shape mode, path mode, pixel mode. I'm going to recommend that you always work in the shape mode. It's the most flexible. We have fill color, which is the inside color. So you can pick a color here, or you can get the main color picker. So just pick a color here. And the stroke is the border. It's just the proper term for border. So pick some color of a stroke. Oops. And then we have the stroke weight. So if you want to be able to see it, I'm going to bump it up a little bit. You can either go in here and type a number. I'll just type in 15. And the default is a solid stroke. You can certainly change it, and there's some more options here, but I'm going to keep it simple. And now when we go in here and draw a rectangle, we get, this is our fill and this is our stroke. It shows as its own shape layer because we drew it in the shape mode. It tells you the dimensions here, and if I draw another one out, I get another layer and they're independent. I can turn one off, turn it back on. Now there's some other modes in here. I'm going to get rid of my second one in here. The default is new layer. So that's why I got a new layer. I can combine shapes, and what this will do is redraw. So I'm going to add, if you notice my cursor has got a little plus at the bottom, I can reshape depending on what I do. These little lines are just kind of showing you what shapes you use, so different rectangles here. If I deselect the rectangle layer and go to background, they disappear, so they don't print or anything like that. They're just there for reference. You can also go into the subtract front shape. You can take a chunk out and it redraws the stroke based on the new shape that you made. And if you get in there and you just play around, intersect isn't that interesting, but exclude overlapping shapes is kind of fun. You go in there and create some abstract patterns. All right, let's clean that up and move over. One more thing I want to show you here. If you draw a rectangle, it's going to just show up wherever. If you want to control where it goes, drag it out. Don't let go of the mouse. Hold the space bar down, and then you can reposition. So that's kind of a handy little trick. Again, that was just clicking and dragging and then holding the space bar to position. If you want to draw a perfect square, 4 equal sides, start dragging out your rectangle. Once you hit the shift key, it's going to lock it into a perfect square with 4 equal sides, and then you can still hold the space bar along with the shift key to put it in position. Another thing that you can do, if you know the dimensions of the shape you want, instead of clicking and dragging, just click your mouse and it will ask you what size do you want. So if you want one that's 250 pixels, I'm just going to use tab. And let's say I want it 250 by 500, and it will draw whatever dimensions you put. So that's the basics, and it's pretty much the same for all of the tools. Rounded rectangle, the only difference is you can change the radius. I'll just bump up the radius so you can see what it does. All the other settings are basically the same thing. This should be back on new layer. Moving on, we've got ellipse tool, pretty much the same thing. You can draw an ellipse. If you want a perfect circle, hold the space bar after you start dragging it out. You can see it locks it in. Then we have our polygon tool, which is kind of fun. Your basic polygon, it tells you right here how many sides. So if you slide this, you want, more sides, you can drag that out. Obviously, if you have too many sides, you're not going to be able to see anything. But one of the fun things that you can do with lots of sides, let me just bump this up, is go into these settings here, and you can create a star. And we've got 30 sides, so we're going to get 30 points. Some other things you can do is go in here and you can smooth the corners of your star. So you can see they're not pointed. Undo that, and you can get in there and fool around with the indent. So if I increase the indent significantly, I get more of a starburst. So you just have to be willing to go in there and play with the different settings. So that's your polygon. And then we have the line tool. It's pretty basic. You can draw, whoops, turn the right tool on. Line tool, you can create lines, and it's based off of your stroke color up here. Now, if you want to draw a perfectly horizontal line, if you get close to horizontal and you throw down the shift key with it, it's going to lock it in at 0 degrees. And you can see the angle measurement in that little gray box to the right. It tells you the length of the line as well. If I want to draw a perfectly straight line, if I get it close to vertical and then I hold the shift key, it will lock it in. And if you go diagonally and you hold the shift key, it will lock in at 45 degrees. So no, people don't really use the line tool that much, but if you need it, that's how you use it. And one other thing actually on the line tool, this is the weight, that's the thickness of your line. So this is a 10. Let's make this kind of large, almost looks like a rectangle. And obviously the lower the number, so if I take it down, say to a 3, there's a 3 pixel line. And last we have the custom shape tool. Custom shapes are available here. When you first get in, you won't get all these categories. You have to go to this little gear flyout, and these are categories. So if I want to look only at animals and I say replace current, it's only going to show that category. If I select another category, banners and awards, I have a choice. Now, if I click OK, these will disappear from the window and replace it with the banners and awards. If I append, it's just going to add them on to the end. So look here, I've got this paw print. If I append, it's going to add on the others. If I go to another category, arrows, and I replace, I will only see arrows. Me personally, I just go to all and click OK. That way I can see all the categories and I don't have to worry about what category is, the check mark in. Another thing that you can do just to customize your view, you can do large thumbnails. And the other thing here, sometimes when you first open it, this window is quite small. This is a little gripper, and you can expand your window. Some other settings in here, you've got small list, which is quite small, and large list. So I usually just stay on small thumbnails. And you just get in there and you can fool around with, all kinds of shapes and draw different things. And if you don't like the fill or something like that, if I turn the fill off, that's this icon that gets rid of that in there. Just a couple other things before I end the video. If I want to change the shape color, I can do it here. I'm actually going to back up to a rectangle because this is going to be easier for you to understand. So if I want to change the fill, I can change the fill. If I want to change the stroke, I can change the stroke. Over here, if I double click the layer thumbnail for the rectangle, the only thing I can change here is the color fill. Okay, so if I switch this to green, my stroke will stay black. There's no way to edit the stroke here. You'd have to go back up to the options bar. And all of the shapes that we've drawn, they're all editable. They're like everything else. You can Control-T them. If you don't like the size that you drew it to begin with, you can certainly stretch it out. You can do basically anything you can do with any object that you place in Photoshop. So that's how you use the shapes. And again, that is this grouping here. And we have Quick Key U that will cycle through all of these different variety of shape tools.